Hey everyone, it's Mark Skipper Mark, and today is day 2 of Matt removing and rebuilding his 305 engine in his 1985 IROC Camaro. If you haven't seen day 1, I'll link to it up above and in the description below. Today he's going to take out the engine, and that starts with attaching the engine hoist plate to the intake manifold. Matt had forgotten to take the fuel pump off yesterday, so he's doing that now. He also makes multiple checks to see if anything is still attached, like this ground wire at the back of the engine that he missed. In order to get the engine past the wiper motor, he's taking the valve cover off on the driver's side. The passenger side one is already off to fit around the heater components on the firewall. Before bringing in the engine hoist, he had to disconnect the transmission from the engine, and this is done from underneath the car. Okay. As he raises the engine, he continues checking for additional ground wires and other things that could still be attached, and he periodically goes under the car to make sure the transmission is fully disconnected. The engine will still have a lot of antifreeze in it, so it's a good idea to have a couple buckets nearby to catch it. The headers are detached from the engine, but they're very difficult to get out, so he left them in place until the engine was partially raised and there was room to maneuver them. The engines in these cars kind of sit back in the firewall, so once everything is detached, you just have to give it a pull to get it to come out. He left the bell housing attached because there were too many bolts to take out and not enough room to work when it was underneath the car. At this point, Matt just jacked it up high enough to pull it out over the car, and it easily slid into the driveway. Actually, I'm just kidding. Because our garage floor is so bad, he really struggled, and he wouldn't let me help him because I'm old. Eventually, he did get it out of the garage, and then he had to take off the bell housing, the clutch, and the flywheel so he could mount it to the engine stand. The clutch is extremely heavy, and you definitely don't want to drop it, so be careful when you take that off. Also, once you get everything off the back of the engine, it'll tip forward and antifreeze will leak out, and that's actually why Matt leaves the radiator hose attached so it doesn't drip all over the engine. Okay, now I need to add a disclaimer. You don't want to do what Matt did here. He couldn't get the right length bolts to hold the engine to the stand, so he jury-rigged a contraption of washers and cheap sockets to act as spacers. Thankfully, nothing bad happened, but he should have just waited until the proper bolts came in. Once the engine was on the stand, he took the rest of the parts off, which included the water pump, pulleys, and everything else. The intake manifold can sometimes get stuck, so you might have to pry it off with a screwdriver. While draining the oil, he took off the rocker arms and the pushrods. He plans to reuse them, but they don't have to go back in any special order, so he just threw them into a plastic bag. He didn't have a magnet to take out the lifters, so he had to turn the engine over and pull them out manually. He plans to install a new camshaft, which means the old lifters can't be reused, but he kept them in the order they came out just in case. The heads often get stuck to the engine block and need to be whacked with a plastic or rubber mallet to loosen them up, so it's very important to leave some bolts in place when doing this to prevent them from falling off. They are very heavy and could do some serious damage if they hit the ground or your foot. Like the engine block, they hold a lot of antifreeze, so have a bucket nearby to catch it. So this is the end of day 2 for this video. Matt was going to keep working, but he ran into a problem. He couldn't find his good harmonic balancer puller. He had a cheap one, and when he tried to remove it, it was stripped out, and so he couldn't get the harmonic balancer off. So that's it. We're going to call it a day. And if you have any questions, please leave a message in the comments below, and I'll be happy to answer the best I can. Thanks for watching and have a great day.